welcome to this week's episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, so this week it's the Christmas edition. How do you know it's the Christmas edition? Well, I have Christmas accoutrements, of course. I have the sparkly deer and the Christmas bauble. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, come on, you know. The main thing, of course, is history dictates that the Christmas episode of the show is always some expensive whiskey that frankly, you know, only a handful of people can probably afford to buy, but fortunately I get sent samples. So just a very, very big thank you to Lord Mackillop and Angus Dundee for kindly sending me samples for well, not only for obviously this week's episode of the show, but obviously to consider purchasing for the shop, which indeed I have. And well, this current release, batch of release was numbered about 12 in actual fact, and it was a difficult job figuring out which ones that I thought were worthwhile. Well, I mean, they're all bloody good at the end of the day. I mean, it just goes without saying that Mackillop's choice, Lord Mackillop's selection is pretty much spot on. I mean, there's been the odd one or two I haven't been overly fond of, but I think sort of quality wise there are very, very few independent bottling companies that can touch Mackillop's choice for just bloody good quality whiskey that goes in the bottle. And it's because he doesn't bottle too many, and yes, they tend to be sort of like quite old malts, but even so, I mean, you know, with old malts you're obviously gonna have to wade through some less than desirable bottlings and casks to get to the real gems, and that's exactly what Lorne does. So anyway, right, we're gonna have a good look at half a dozen. I mean, there's always a possibility I might do the other half dozen at some later stage next year, but we're going to look at 4 that I've certainly purchased for the shop, and a couple of other ones that I am denied about, shall we say. So without much more ado, I don't think you want to hear too much more waffle. You want to know what we'll be tasting. Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with a Balblair. Now, you don't see an awful lot of privately bottled Balblair, it has to be said, so it's always interesting when one of these bottlings comes one's way. And this is a 20-year-old Balblair. It was distilled in May of 1997, and like all of the bottlings today, they were bottled in September of this year. Cask number 124 at a strength of 55.2%, and incidentally the cheapest of the bottlings that we're looking at today, with a retail price of £170, £180. So yeah, a cheap one. The second bottling we're looking at is a Macallan. Now, as you can see from the colour, this is an American oak aged Macallan. I love American oak aged Macallan, certainly when it's got some bit of age to it, which this one has. It's a 19-year-old. It was distilled in February of 1998, and from cask number 154, sorry, bottled at 53.8, and is quite expensive, shall we say, with a retail price of somewhere between £380 and £390, £400. So yeah, Macallan, you know, it ain't cheap. The third bottling we'll be looking at is a Tamdhu. This is the oldest bottling we have in today's episode of the show. It's a 28-year-old Tamdhu, distilled in May of 1989. Bottled at 48.1% from cask 4126, with a price tag of somewhere around £230 to £240. So should be interesting. You know, old Tamdhu can be really nice. The fourth bottling we'll be looking at is a good old Glen Grant. Nothing like old Glen Grant in my personal opinion, and this has got a little bit of age to it as well. It's 27 years old. It's cask 23046, distilled in October 1989 and bottled at 51.7, and with a retail price of somewhere between £280 and £300. So, yeah, a fair price, has to be said. And the penultimate bottling we'll be looking at is a Highland Park. Now, Lorna's bottled some magnificent old Highland Park and Bowmore and what have you over the years, so hopefully this will be an absolute treat. It's 25-year-old, so yeah, you know it ain't going to be cheap. It's from cask 8103, distilled in December of 1991, bottled at 53.9 with a retail figure of somewhere between 320 and 350. And finally, the Ardbeg. Now, yeah, it's going to be bloody expensive, so it really needs to be top quality stuff. It's a 24-year-old Ardbeg, distilled in September of 1993 and bottled obviously in September of this year, from cask 1290 and bottled at 50.9% with a retail price somewhere between 450 and 460, 70 odd pounds per bottle. So yes, that's a bit eye-watering, but hopefully it'll be damn worth it. Anyway, so that's today's little lineup, and let's kick off with a cheapie then, shall we? No time to be afraid. Right, okay, so let's take a look at the Balblair. Let's see what the nose gives us, shall we? Pleasantly mature, barley, got that sort of slight Highlandy granity edge which you come to expect from Balblair. It's got some lovely subtle vanilla, subtle baked fruit, absolutely wonderfully elegant. There's a little bit of lime coming out, a little bit of gooseberry possibly, in that sort of classic old Spey Highland kind of fashion. I mean, the balance is just absolutely spot on. I mean, you got the mature fruit, the mature oak, the sort of citrus still remaining. It is absolutely gorgeous, really sort of classy, elegant, and just like I said, just absolutely perfectly balanced. Everything, all the notes in complete harmony. Absolutely fantastic. And like I said, the cheapie bottle at 170 quid. But wow, it's just really worth it. Absolutely delightful. A little bit of coffee, sort of sub-coffee kind of oak notes coming out now. Even a little bit of malt as well. Yeah, it's just absolutely spot on. Let's see what the palate's like. Wow, that's gorgeous. Kicks off with a little bit more oak, a slightly more sort of creamy kind of oak, and then in comes the sort of like the baked fruit, the malt, the barley, and that finish is amazingly good. Sort of lovely citrus, lime, gooseberry again, minerals, almost a sort of a salty minerality in actual fact. Really sort of intensely citric on the finish, but again beautifully balanced, lovely progression through the flavours, and yeah, I mean, it's just like, whoa, that's a real wake up finish, it has to be said. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic, and great start. Okay, so let's move on to the Macallan now. As I keep saying, one of the wonderful things about the independent sector is getting hold of whiskies like this. This is the sort of stuff that the distillery just does not release, It's a shame it doesn't, but then that's the distillery. The distillery decides that it's going to use a proportion of sherry, and is well known for using those types of casks. But as we know, they use American oak as well, and well, let's just see what the nose gives us. That is lovely. I mean, this is always the thing with Macallan, that you don't get that sort of lovely aromatic barley, the white fruit, the pear, the sweet, the lusciously sweet barley, the honey. I mean, some old Macallans can get very, very straw-like. I've certainly tasted them, and they become, like I said, sort of quite old and dusty. But this has just got some vibrancy, for I mean, admittedly it's only 19. I mean, it's not like it's really ancient, but there's a lovely vibrancy that, like I said, white fruit, apple, citrus, subtle oak, little bit of wood spice kind of coming through. I mean, that is just stunning. I mean, just wonderfully, mature. It feels certainly it's got a little bit more maturity than you would expect at 19, but it's certainly got that sort of, fresh edge to it. And, a bit more oak kind of developing as it sat in the glass, a little bit more sort of creaminess kind of coming through, slight toffee note possibly. But, oh, wow, that is absolutely sensational. And I just had to buy it. I mean, it's just, anyway, palate time. Oh, that's just so mellow. Wonderful citrus finish, but more in the orange tangerine as opposed to sort of lime and lemon kind of citrus. Wonderfully barley to start off with. You get this combination of mature dusty barley and sweet barley, a little bit of honey, a little bit of sweet oak, and like I said, that sort of burst of citrus on the finish, which is just like it's so mellow and laid back and absolutely stunning. The structure is amazingly good. I mean, you can feel the sort of like the tannins are just on the edge there, and they're just kind of giving it a sort of a really nice structure, and that's what I think something that a lot of people just seem to forget about whiskey, that oak doesn't just add vanilla notes and caramel and coconut and things like that. It also gives a whiskey structure. The tannins kind of just almost like a scaffolding, I suppose, to sort of just hold all the sort of like the rest of the character together. And you can certainly just sense that the tannins just holding everything nicely together, and that is just unbelievably good. That is just absolutely stunning. And if you have deep pockets and you love mature-ish Speyside whiskies, Right, okay, so let's move on to the Tamdhu. Like I said, this is a 28-year-old at 48.1%. Let's see what nose gives us on this one, shall we? Oh, that is mellow. Again, some lovely barley, a little tauter possibly than the Macallan. A little bit more vanilla oak, a little bit of toffee, some wonderful, almost fresh barley notes. I mean, that is amazing. And that oak has that lovely kind of sawdusty, dusty, mature character. There's a little bit of violet, touch of light coffee, a little bit of spice, but it's really elegant, really delicate, and absolutely fabulous. And that is a lovely, lovely whisky. That's the sort of whisky that I could just sit here all day sniffing. It has to be said. It just ticks all my boxes. I love that kind of dusty, mature oak character, as you probably are well aware by now, or certainly those who watch the programme often enough will certainly know that. And this is just absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, better taste it. Now the main thread of this is about the oak. It's got that lovely kind of, like I said, on the nose, that sort of dustiness. It also gives you some lovely vanilla and a little sort of toffee undercurrent as well. Some lovely barley, some apricots, some almost kind of not quite oxidised. There is a sort of a slight oxidised edge to the fruit, but that's all adding to the character of it. It's got a lovely kind of soft citric note as well. There's a little bit of white chocolate on the finish. Lovely freshness. It's got just a lovely mouth-filling character, and that is absolutely fabulous. Really, really ticks all my boxes. Lovely stuff. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Glen Grant. So, and again, 27 years old. Let's see what those is. That is just classic old Glen Grant to me. It's got that sort of edge, if you see what I mean. It's kind of, if I was going to use wine terminology, this is a Bordeaux and the previous one was probably a Burgundy, I think. That's a crap analogy, isn't it? Right, okay, so let's move on to the 27-year-old Glen Grant. Let's see what those gives us on this end. Absolutely classic old Glen Grant. It has that wonderful kind of straight up and down kind of oak character. I mean, it probably, unless you've sort of like tasted old Glen Grant, they're probably pretty bloody meaningless, but it's kind of got a real sort of lovely oak structure. It's got an elegance, a delicacy, a crispness. Well, no, crispness is the wrong word. Oh, fuck's sake. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 27-year-old Glen Grant. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Absolutely classic old Glen Grant. It has this lovely kind of structure to it, which I've found with old Glen Grants. It has a lightness, and you're certainly getting lots of kind of, almost kind of tea leafy kind of tannins, a sort of dusty, almost incense. It's got a vibrancy. There's some real mature baked fruit, some baked gooseberry, a little bit of lime as well, just kind of freshening it up. There's a touch of mint, a little bit of herbs as well, but it has that kind of straight up and down character. I know it's not sort of, I mean, it's not a kind of effusive and sort of, you know, hugely oaked and vanillaed and all that kind of stuff. Glen Grant just tends to be quite focused, not narrow so much, but really focused and fresh, and that is just absolutely spot on old Glen Grant. It just has that kind of classic old whiskey character. It's a bit like sort of, you know, a classic old Bordeaux, I suppose. It just says classic, you know. Absolutely stunning. A little bit of chocolatey spice as well, touch of coffee, some mature honey, sort of slightly darker honey, almost kind of sort of the edge between sort of dark honey and treacle, but we're not quite in the sort of like the full-on treacle notes, but we're
just on that kind of edge, and that is just absolutely stunning. I mean, and I 280 quid. Well, bargain. I have two, thank you very much. Gosh, just absolutely classic. Let's see what the palate gives us. The thing with Old Glen Grant is, like I say, it has that sort of straight up and down kind of old tea chests, old cigar boxes, quite tannic, and it needs, it needs some mature fruit. It needs a bit of sort of old barley kind of character, which this has, a little bit of honey as well, just to kind of stop it being overly dry. And this is just absolutely spot on. There's that lovely kind of dryness, but there's certainly plenty of mature, darkish honey to kind of like just sort of offset that kind of drying character. There's a little bit of citrus on the finish, a little bit of dark chocolate as well, very subtle. But it's the sort of like the oak and the mature oak that's kind of really kind of the sort of the focal point of this particular Glen Grant. And again, it just says classic old Glen Grant to me. And if you've never had sort of a whiskey quite like it, then it's certainly worth getting hold of a bottle, because it is, like I said, it's just like a classic old Bordeaux, as opposed to maybe say a new world fruit monster, shall we say. This is kind of just so old world it is untrue, but it is stunning. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 25-year-old Highland Park. And again, like Macallan, Highland Park being one of those distilleries that often has a tendency to use, a chunk of sherry, and it's very rare you get a sort of like, your hands on an old American oak aged Highland Park. So let's see what this is like. Wow, my God, that is really estery. Wonderfully, slightly tropical. I love how sometimes you get these old whiskies that become almost kind of tropical in character. There's sort of apricot, there's luscious honey, touch of milky vanilla, and then underneath that I'm getting a little bit of cigar leaf, touch of smoke, some definite sort of almost kind of what appears to me first fill American oak notes, with that sort of slightly sort of spicy, sort of rye kind of undertone. Full, juicy. I mean, this is just absolutely stunning. I mean, unbelievable. Absolutely. I mean, all this fruit. It's almost kind of Aaron-esque, it has to be said, and really, I can't remember the last time I came across such a fruity Highland Park at this kind of age. But like I said, I mean, it's got so many other kind of aromas going on. Like I said, you're getting the wood, you're getting the sort of the undertone of sort of old peat and that kind of thing. Oh, that is just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Let's see what the palate's like. Oh my God, that finish is incredible. It kicks off with a little bit more oak. You're certainly getting a little bit more sort of creamier oak. Fleshy fruit, maybe not quite so tropical, but it's certainly got that slight tropical edge to the fruit. And then in comes that sort of cigar leaf and a little bit of delicate smoke, a little bit of peat, and certainly that earthy kind of peat lingers right the way through the finish. It dries a little bit on the finish, but there's so much kind of juiciness to the malt. It is just, you know, supremely balanced, it has to be said. I mean, that is just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, that is just stunning Old Highland Park, and it's just got so much character. A little bit of salt as well. Mouth filling. That finish is to absolutely die for. That is absolutely stunning, and it's got to be one of the best Highland Parks that I've ever tasted. It has to be said. Right, okay, and finally let's move on to the Ardbeg. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Wonderfully mature. It's got that lovely sort of old islery kind of character. The sort of the delicate, slightly violety peat, some salt, some crisp, edgy citrus, a bit of bog myrtle. Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. A little bit of woodiness, which is what you'd expect with Ardbeg. Touch of tea leaf, tobacco leaf. Oh, it's just so delicate and elegant, but it's got a touch of almost kind of pineapple. That was a bit strange. No. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Ardbeg. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end. Oh, classic old Ardbeg, quite woody, gritty, almost kind of tarry peat. Some sweet barley kind of coming through, malt, a little bit of eucalyptus, possibly sort of eucalyptus menthol kind of herbal notes, a bit of maybe bog myrtle, some lovely saltiness. It's got a lovely maturity. It's got that kind of stewed fruit kind of character as opposed to maybe baked fruit. That's just absolutely gorgeous. That is just absolutely classic. Rhubarb. Just got a whiff of rhubarb then. Absolutely classic old Ardbeg, it has to be said. Slightly woody, gritty, but with some lovely barley character, some salt, a little bit of tobacco leaf. Oh, that's a lovely nose. Better taste it. Excuse me on that one. So it kind of opens up with quite a lot of barley character in actual fact. Slightly sweet barley character, and then in comes all that kind of woodiness. I'm getting the sort of the coffee, the chocolate, the sort of cigar, the sort of burnt wood, a little bit of iodine, some menthol. Wow, that is just incredibly complex. That's just wonderfully mature. Slightly violety on the finish with that sort of lingering gritty peat smoke and tar, and wow, that is just full, intense, but wonderfully mature. That is just an absolutely stunning, classic Ardbeg. Oh my god, that's incredible. Okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. 6 truly stunning whiskies from Mackillop's choice, it has to be said. Balblair, just wonderfully mature, has that lovely kind of, mature Highland character, great progression of flavours, I mean just absolutely superb. The Macallan, like I said, I just love American Oak Age Macallan. It just shows how good the spirit is and how wonderfully it matures, and I'm just, okay, some of the sort of the sherry Macallans can be quite interesting, but it's always then just about the sherry, and the malt, the spirit itself is absolutely gorgeous, and that's what I want to taste, and well, you can certainly taste it in that particular bottling. Wonderful old Tamdhu, still has that sort of lovely elegant citric character, bit, quite a bit of oak, that sort of wonderful sort of combination of sort of dusty oak and sort of vanilled oak, I thought was just really appealing. The Glen Grant, absolutely classic, like I said, it's just sort of, think of old Glen Grant, and that is just it, just absolutely spot on, absolutely classic. The Highland Park, wonderfully almost tropical kind of maturity to it, really sort of expressive, just an absolutely gorgeous Highland Park, it has to be said. And the Ardbeg, Mackillop's bottled an old Ardbeg, I think it was a 91 Ardbeg, year or two back now, which was very impressive, and this cask is very impressive as well. Just again, absolutely classic, lovely old, slightly woody Ardbeg, as Ardbeg has a tendency to be, but it's just absolutely stunning. So anyway, that's this week's episode of the Show in the Bag. I'm guessing this is probably going to be the last episode of 2017, so I'd just like to say a big thank you for all of your support, your comments, watching the show. Obviously, if it wasn't for you guys, then I wouldn't be doing this. I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the distilleries and all of the independent bottling companies, the agents, the importers, etc, that have kindly sent me samples throughout the entirety of the year. Again, if it wasn't for their support, then again I wouldn't be doing these episodes of the show. So anyway, if this is indeed the last episode of the show before the new year, which I imagine it probably will be, I would just like to wish you all a really happy Christmas. I hope you have some stunning drams. I hope you will maybe get one of these stunning drams. It has to be said. So anyway, all I have to say is a very good dramming and good afternoon.